What's up, how you doing? Good. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, this morning about 8:25, police officers were dispatched to a suspicious person call, a man walking down the street waving a sword. An off-duty officer that was actually on his way to work was flagged down by the citizen that made that call, and he pointed out this individual, and he was on the road behind me back here, Richfield Boulevard. The officer approached him. The officer got out of his car, approached this gentleman who had on a trench coat and couldn't tell what he might have. The officer, once he made contact, there was a struggle with this individual. The civilian that called this in saw the struggle and actually responded over and assisted the officer. And the two of them had quite honestly quite a fight with this guy. Our civilian that helped us with this was, he must be 6'3", 240 pounds. He was a big guy, and he told me that guy was really, really strong. So the two of them got this guy pinned down, continued to fight with him and struggle with him. The other officer had knew that there was help coming. He could hear sirens coming. Two more officers responded. They were unable to gain control of this individual. The decision was made to deploy a taser, so they broke from this individual that they had on the ground. An officer deployed his taser. The taser deployed like it's supposed to, but it had no effect. I don't really know at this time whether the probes struck his jacket or something else caused that issue. That officer took a taser from another officer, deployed a second taser, again really to no effect. And as he did the second taser, this individual who had gotten to his knees stood up and from inside his trench coat pulled out a sword. I didn't get real close, but I saw it, and I'm telling you, it's a big sword. It's 3 feet long. I mean, it's a big sword. He pulled that out, and he was right at the door of the police cars where this struggle was taking place. This individual stepped into the police car with the sword and began to rev the motor and was trying to get the car into gear. Two officers, the car belonged to Officer Robert Wilbanks. Officer Wilbanks knew that he had an AR-15 rifle in that car. He knew he also had a second Glock pistol in that car. Was very concerned about all this going on. Officer Wilbanks began to fire shots through the windshield, fired several shots that way, and another officer, Officer Ken Browning, fired several shots through the driver's door. The person then stopped, became unresponsive. They opened the door, took him out. The suspect is dead at the scene. The officers, no real injuries, major injuries. The first officer that was involved with the fight and all that has some abrasions and some scrapes. Our civilian that was helping got a pretty good bite to one hand, and his right hand is hurt. He thinks he maybe could have broken his right hand, and he's en route to the hospital to be checked. I know you had some reports, and some of you were already reporting, even though you maybe didn't know it for sure yet, that there was a house struck nearby by gunfire. That is not the case. All the rounds are accounted for. This all took place very close quarters, shooting into a police car. So we know how many rounds were fired, and we can pretty much account for them. But we did check that because the homeowner said, "Hey, I heard all this commotion, and now I've got some holes in my window." I just spoke with the homeowners. There are 3 holes in a window and 1 in the siding right next to that. So that would have meant 4 shots would have had to hit that house. But after we got up there and looked at it, it's a double-paned window. The first window was broken, the second one was not, and once you could move the furniture and get up there, there are BBs inside the casing. And I had an ET go up a ladder and put a dowel through the hole where the siding, and it only went in about not even an inch. Again, I believe it's a BB or a pellet that did that. So it was not related to us. It was in the general area, and we had gotten that report as well. We checked it, and that doesn't seem to be an issue for us. So that's kind of what I've got for now, and I will have some to follow up tomorrow, but if I miss something, I can help you with.
Do you know anything about the man who was shot?
Not yet. He hasn't been identified yet. Which, you know, you've been out to these things. You know how it goes. It's a very deliberate process. We work our way from the outside in, and we won't do anything with him on going through his pockets or anything like that until we get to that point, and we allow the medical examiner to come here and do that, and that hasn't happened.
So the 2 officers who were in the car were they weren't the off-duty officers. They were the ones who came to help, and they were the ones who fired?
I don't, no, actually Browning was the one that was off duty. He was the first officer that was here. Have I got that right?
No, Wilbanks was off duty.
Okay, Wilbanks was off duty. I knew I'd get that wrong. Wilbanks was off duty, and he was one of the ones that fired. And both those officers, as just standard protocol, are on administrative leave.
How many rounds were shot?
They're still working on that, but it looks like a total of around 12.
Do you know which guns were used? Because you mentioned there were a couple different guns in that car.
None of those guns were used. The officers, the guns that were in the car were, you know, one of them's a rifle that we issue officers, and the other, a lot of officers have a secondary weapon that they carry. And so he had his own, I don't know if it's his own gun or another gun, but he had a second gun in the car that he believed was in the console. Turns out it was in the trunk, but he thought it was in the console, but it was in the car. So both officers drew their issued firearms, and that's what they fired with. But his concern was that this guy was wielding this sword, about to take his car, and there were firearms in the car as well.
Can you describe the disturbance that led to this? What the
just,
man was
just,
doing?
just according to and I didn't listen to the 911 call, just that he's walking down the road of this area that's fairly residential, waving a large sword. It seemed pretty suspicious. So.
Is it real sword? Real sword?
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I saw it. Hopefully, I can get a picture of it for you and give it to you tomorrow. Like I said, it's probably 3 feet long. It's a big, long blade. It's got tape or something on the handle, and it's got some weird metal wings like down around where the handle would be.
You're talking like a samurai type sword.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a real thin sword. It's a wide blade. So I don't know much about swords, but it's a big sword.
Like a machete, maybe?
Kid, like a young teenager. Is that true?
No.
So when they initially saw him, was he waving the sword, or was it just the caller who said he was?
The caller saw him waving it. I'm not sure if the officer saw him waving it or not. When the officer approached him, I think he had it tucked inside his jacket somewhere, and he was unable to. It's a big trench coat.
Did he have anything else under the trench coat that you...
We haven't gotten to that point. I don't know. It's unknown whether he had any other weapons. We haven't gotten to it.
Now, a neighbor told us that an SUV was pulled over, and we also see Stephen Stewart landscaping truck. Is that in any way related to this?
There was one civilian vehicle that was involved, and that was that guy that was here. And then, as you know, on these kinds of things, a lot of people stop, and so you know, there are probably other people that someone might have thought was involved, but was not. So.
Involved how? Like his vehicle was struck, or he just saw?
There was one civilian that called it in, and then he helped the officer fight with the guy.
Okay.
Right. That was the only person that was involved.
You said it was a big struggle. Can you describe that struggle? Was he throwing punches or what?
They were on the ground trying to get control of this individual, and according to the officer, and according to the civilian witness, that, like I said, was bigger than I am, said that they could not get control of him. He was just very strong, and they were unable to get control of him, unable to get his hands so that they could secure him, and so that's how it led to where it was. Hopefully tomorrow I can give you a little more. I'll be able to give you this guy's identity. Hopefully by then, if we're able to do that, and anything else you might come up with, and maybe have a picture of the sword and stuff for you.
Okay.
And Melissa will be able to do that for you. Okay.